straightforward, it's in plain English. What this guide does is spell out basically the process that we're going to go through. It should set out your expectations of me and give you some guidance through the process from start to finish. If you need further information, of course you can go to the Real Estate Authority to get any further information you might happen to want. But please remember, at all times I work for the vendor. I work for the vendor, I'm paid for the vendor, by the vendor rather. You need to be clear that you understand the difference between a conditional and an unconditional agreement. A conditional agreement clearly is one which has conditions in it. An unconditional one is one that doesn't, because the conditions have been satisfied. All right. But my overarching advice to you is to seek your own independent legal advice, right? And I hand this over to my purchaser. My purchaser is now sitting there pretending to read it. Yep, okay. So, while my purchaser is reading the book, I'm going to enter onto the sale and purchase agreement information from the flyer and ditto from the certificate of title. Okay, so for the sake of expediency, I came in a bit earlier this morning and this is what I've done. All right, so this is the information just to speed up the process a little. So I've got the vendor's info. Remember my assumption that the vendor is not registered for GST. I've copied the address. I've struck out the necessary bits and pieces to do with the estate. All I'm left with is fee simple. I've added the size of the site, 609 square meters, the lot number, deposited plan number, and the identifier. My second assumption is that the property is being sold with vacant possession. There are no tenants, and my company is Unitech Realty. Yep, okay. I've also gone to the page where the chattels are. And I've added and deleted chattels as per the flyer. So I've crossed out blinds because there are none, and I've added in all of these additional items. Yeah, so far so good? Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, so I can now go back to my purchaser who's been diligently reading the book all this time, yeah, while I've been filling in all of this information. Okay. So I can now go back to my purchaser. Okay, how did you find the guide? Was that helpful? Of course, she said yes. Yes, of course it was. Great. Okay. So I need to trouble you, please, for a little information. Can you please give me your full legal name as it appears on your passport? Sorry? Ektashi. Anybody? Anything else? Any middle name? No, that's it. Okay. Can we just confirm the spelling of Ekta? E-K-T-A? She, S-H-E-E? And can I have your residential address, please? Yep. Anything you like. You say number 3?
123.
123. Okay. 1, 2, 3. And what suburb is that?
Papperton.
Papperton. Okay. And is anybody else apart from you involved in this transaction? No? Perfect. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the detail of the proposal that you wish to make. Okay. Now the vendor's expectation for this property is $525,000. So you're okay with that?
No.
You're not? Okay. You'll make my life difficult. Okay. What figure would you like to propose to the vendor?
490.
$490,000. That's quite a bit less than the vendor's expecting. Could I persuade you to increase that just a little?
495.
$495, thank you. I'll put it on the agreement and I'll propose it to the vendor.
$5,000 going all the way.
Must be Indian, right? Must be Indian.
Okay.
Indian.
Okay, 495,000. Now, I'm just going to cross out this plus GST. Right? Right. So the price, in fact, includes GST, so it's nice to know nobody's going to come along and hit you after the event for another 15%. So the price that appears on the agreement is the price you pay. Yep, there's no GST to be added afterwards. Okay. Okay, through to the question of deposit. Now, a 10% deposit is customary. And obviously in this case, that's $49,500. But I have to say that the bigger you can make the deposit and the sooner you can pay the deposit, the more attractive your offer is going to appear to the vendor. So with that thought in mind, you're okay with 10%? You are. Oh, you're so easy. Okay, so that's $49,500. Now, that deposit will be payable into my company's trust account. So that means your money goes into the trust account. It's perfectly safe. Nobody can touch it there. Okay.
Upon acceptance.
Okay. Actually, you have some choices here. It is possible to pay the deposit upon acceptance. That is, as soon as everybody's signed up to the agreement. And I'd have to say that's probably the strongest option. The alternative is to delay payment of the deposit until the agreement becomes unconditional. Now, I would recommend that you pay it up front, simply because it makes your offer appear that much stronger to the vendor. But it's your call. What would you like to do? Upon acceptance. God, I wish all purchases were like this.
You're giving out everything.
I know. We make it.
He's, I don't know how these vendors.
Upon acceptance, okay. Now the next thing we come to here is the settlement date. Now I'd actually like to skip over that just for the moment, because I'm sure we need to have some discussion about various conditions and so forth that you might want. So I will come back and I'll revisit that again shortly. The other thing we need to look at here is this question of interest for late settlement. Now, the whole point about having interest for late settlement is that it keeps everybody honest. So I'm not suggesting for a moment that you are dishonest, but in the unlikely event that you were to be late with your settlement, then it would give the vendor the opportunity to charge you interest for that period that you were late. But I have to say it's very fair because it applies equally the other way around as well. Because in the event that the vendor was late, you would be able to charge them penalty interest. Okay. Now, penalty interest has to be at a high enough rate for it to hurt, for it to be a penalty. Now, what I'm proposing we put in here is 14%. You're okay with that? 14%, okay. Come now to the question of finance. All right. Can you tell me, please, will you be raising a mortgage to complete this transaction? You will? Okay. All right. In that case, I need to trouble you for a little more information, please. Can you tell me who's your preferred lender? Westpac. What I suggest we do, I've inserted Westpac as being your preferred lender, but what I suggest we do is we add the words or similar. By adding the words or similar, we give you the latitude to be able to shop around amongst the other banks. It's possible that one of Westpac's competitors might be offering a really fancy deal right now and you want to take advantage of it. So it's a good idea to add or similar. It gives you some flexibility. Is that okay with you? All right. Okay. And how much will you need to borrow to complete this transaction? 300,000? Okay. Right. Question of finance date. Now, this is the date by which your bank is going to approve the loan. Now, today, most banks, certainly the big trading banks, are turning around loan applications in about 4 or 5 working days. So, what I'm suggesting is that we put in here 10 working days, so that will give you plenty of time to shop around amongst the other banks to strike the best deal you possibly can. So if I say 10 working days from the date of this agreement, then you've always got 10 working days to get out there and source some finance. Does that work for you? It does?
Excuse
Okay.
me? Richard, I have got a question.
Okay.
Can we make it 15 days?
It could, anything you wish.
Okay.
It's whatever's agreed.
Hmm. The date of this agreement.
Okay. Now, there is provision on this document for you to make your offer conditional on several reports. The first one is a LIM report. Now, if you elect to get a LIM report, and I suggest that you do, if you get a LIM report, it would be at your cost, but it does give you valuable information as the background of the property. Basically, it's a file search. Everything the council has about the property will be in that report. I recommend you get one, but it would be at your own cost. So are you okay with that? You get one of those? Similarly, a building report, again, it would be at your own cost, but I recommend that you get one of these as well. What it means is that a builder of your choice, builder, licensed building practitioner, building inspector, can come around, check out the property, make sure there's nothing nasty lurking in there that's going to cause you a problem a bit further down the track. I'd suggest it's money well spent. Yeah, you're okay? Good. Get one of those as well? Okay. All right. There's provision on here for properties which require consent under the Overseas Investment Act, but there's nothing about this particular property that's going to trigger any of those requirements. So that's automatically going to be a no. We just don't need that. So I'll strike out yes and make that no.
So you have to explain that during the...
Yeah, yes,
It's, if you don't, your assessor might ask.
Yeah.
Yeah? If you skate over it, the probably say, what's that all about? Okay. Okay, we come now to the question of further terms of sale or special conditions. Is there anything else that you would like me to add into this? I mean, do you, for example, have another property you need to sell? You do, okay. So where are you up to in that process?
Waiting for it to become unconditional.
So you've got an offer on your property already, and you're waiting for it to become unconditional. Okay, all right. I've taken the liberty of cutting this out already just to speed up the process. So, conditional purchaser's property sale becoming unconditional. Can you tell me please, firstly, what's the date of that agreement, the agreement on your property?
1st March 2018.
Well, March 2018. So I should have said, I'm assuming today is the 2nd of March. Yeah, because that's when you're doing your assessment, all right? So today's the 2nd of March, okay. And what is the address, please, of the property you're selling?
2 Big Street, Templeton.
2 Big Street. Puna. And who is buying your property? Donald Duck. Right. Okay, and can you tell me please, when does that deal become unconditional? Can you give me a time and a date?
3 p.m. 20th of April.
3 p.m. when, sorry?
20th of April.
20 April 2018. Okay. All right. So I can now take my trusty glue stick, some glue on the back of that, and put it into my agreement. Right. This is now clause 19. Okay. All right. So is there anything else about the property that causes you any concern? I mean, do you, for instance, need anybody to check out wiring, plumbing, or any of those sorts of things?
Yes, one of them will.
Or for plumbers, right, okay. So, right, specialist report clause, so it's a report on plumbing.
Put it on the screen there, please.
There's a report on the plumbing to be obtained from. Okay, so do you have a particular plumber in mind you like to use?
No.
You don't, okay. You could have given me a nice easy name.
Oh, you can go.
It doesn't matter.
ABC Plumbing?
Registered plumber, okay. All right. We need to put in a time frame for this, for the plumber to come along, check out the property and come back with a report. For something like that, I suggest 2 weeks is probably reasonable. Yeah, it's okay with you? Right. Go to my calendar. We're doing this on the 2nd of March, so 2 weeks takes me up to the 16th of March. Okay, same process. Put some glue on the back of that. I've now got clause number 20. Okay. All right. You don't need any more reports, okay? All right, for the sake of this exercise, that's right. That's right, we got two, that's enough for the process. Okay, all right, that's fine. All right. I'd like to come back now, please, to this question of the settlement date. Yeah, okay. Now, you told me just now that you've got a contract on your existing property in Takapuna. Can you tell me, please, when does that property sale going to settle?
On the 3rd May.
On the what, sorry?
3rd of May.
On the 3rd of May. Okay. Now, can I assume that you want to move out of your old property and into your new property on the same day? You do? Okay. So if the settlement date for that one is the 3rd of May, then by default this one is also going to be 3rd of May. Okay. 3 May 2018. Okay. Good. All right, we're nearly done. So the chattel's being sold with the property. This particular property comes with stove, fixed floor coverings, curtains, light fittings. There's also some drapes, waste disposal unit, the range hood, heated towel rail, garden shed, and 5 wonderful concrete garden gnomes. Okay, all of those things come with the property. That's exactly what you thought? Good, okay. Excellent. Right. If you have no further questions, we come now to the ceremony of the signatures. All right. You're set to go now? Okay, right, let's do it. There's nothing that needs to be initialed on the front page because we've made no alterations, no additions. Okay. Through to the page where I put in these 2 extra clauses. Now, what I would like you to do, please, is to initial against each one of those clauses, but because I've added them in, separate pieces of paper, I would like you to initial across the join. Yes, so were one of these to become detached, it will be obvious that they have become detached. So I'll get you to initial across the join. Yeah, okay. So for the moment, this is Hector's initial. All right, I won't get you to do it. So those are Hector's initials. Okay. Okay. So I think it's appropriate at this point probably to pause and consider what we have here. If we go right back to the beginning, we have an offer which is, I have to say, less than the vendor's expectation. We've got a good strong deposit, but your offer is conditional on finance, LIM report, building report, sale of another property, and also on a specialist report. So there's 5 places where this could actually fall over. So I have to say that from the vendor's point of view, that's not a particularly attractive proposition. Yeah, from the vendor's point of view, that starts to look a bit shaky. So, what we can do to make your offer appear more attractive to the vendor is we add in something called an escape clause. Okay. What the escape clause does is to allow the vendor to keep the property on the market and in fact to enter into another contract for the sale of the same property. Yeah, okay. That doesn't mean they're going to sell it twice. It means that the vendor can enter into another contract for the sale of the other property. Right. But what we're doing here, for all practical purposes, is we're setting up a queue. And you're number one, you're at the head of the queue. So in the event that somebody else does come along and they do want to buy the property, then the vendor would need to come back to you because you're number one. They would need to come back to you and give you a period of notice. And I'm suggesting 5 working days. And in that 5 working day window, you would have to make a decision. You can, if you choose, declare your offer unconditional, that is, you bought the property. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that, you can just walk away. Yeah, but it's your decision. So, how do you feel about that? Are you okay for me to insert that now? You are? Okay. I'll just add in. So here's my escape clause, becomes clause 21. So I've added in here, excuse my lousy writing, 5th working day, right, for the notice period. Okay, so I would ask you please also to initial that clause as well, across the join, so there's Hector's initial. Right. We don't need to discuss anything to do with GST. On the chattels list, would you please initial against blinds, because I've struck it out, and initial please against all of the extra items that I've added in, 1 initial against each one. So Hector is initialing there, 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 and there. Okay. Right, we're nearly through this process. Now, before I ask you to actually sign this document with a full signature, when you're signing it, you're doing a couple of things. One, you're actually making an offer. This is formally your offer now because you're signing it. You're also confirming the receipt of this little booklet that you read just now. And before you do that, one last thing, I would invite you please to read these warnings here on the back page. Get that into focus, here we go. I'd like you please to read these warnings. Okay, so I turn it around, give it to Hector so she can read through the warnings. As always, my overarching advice to you is to seek your own independent legal advice. Yeah? If this gets signed up now by the other side, we have a legally binding contract. And that's not something to be entered into lightly. So as always, I recommend you seek your own independent legal advice. Yeah? You're happy to proceed, right? Yeah, I thought you would be. Good.
She's happy.
Okay. So Hector is going to initial here to acknowledge that she's read the warnings on the back page, and that's Hector's purchaser's signature. Okay, all good? All right, let's pause though there for a moment. Okay, so now I have an offer, right? Yeah, all signed up, ready to go. Okay. Next step is I need to phone my vendor. I need to phone my vendor to make an appointment. Who's my vendor? Harry Potter. Okay. All right. So I'll just do both sides. It's quicker and easier. Okay. So I phone my vendor. I say, hello Harry, it's Richard here from Unitech Realty. I'd like to make an appointment to come and discuss a proposal with you. And he responds with, that's great, you've got an offer, how much is it? I said, well, it's actually a reasonably complex proposal. There's quite a few conditions in it, and we need to work out way through conditions and dates and so forth. It really would be so much easier if I can put the document down on the table in front of us, and we'll go through the whole thing together from start to finish. You're okay with that? Just say yes, I'll put the copy on, come on over. Yeah, really easy. All right, so I'm now
Their price
sitting
was
with my
875.
vendor.
I have to do-
Right, we exchange the usual pleasantries. Hello, how are you? Isn't it a wonderful day? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Okay, Harry, before we go any further, the first thing I need to do is to present you with this copy of the Real Estate Authority Guide into Sale and Purchase Agreements. All right, and I'll repeat the same explanation. Yeah, I won't do it again, but I'll repeat the same explanation. Okay, take that as read. Okay, let's have a look through the proposal that we have here. Now, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this, please bear in mind you have three choices here. If you like the look of what's here, you can accept it. Straightforward, I just tell you where to initial, where to sign, and it's done. You simply accept as it stands. Alternatively, if you absolutely hate everything that's here, you can just reject it if you choose. Simply say no, take it away. Alternatively, if you wish, we can counter it. That is, we create a counter offer. So there may be some aspects of this you like, some you don't like. What we would do is use this as the basis to construct a counter offer, to go back the other side. But I have to say that if we do that, there's a risk that we will lose the purchaser, because by making any change at all to this document, even the smallest change, if I add a comma, yeah, the smallest change, I am now changing the offer, okay? That means that we are now going back to the other side with a counter offer. And when I go back to the other side with a counter offer, they're going to have the same choices. They can accept it, they can reject it, they can counter it. So there is a possibility that the purchaser might just throw up their hands and walk away. Yeah, that's the risk. Okay, so with that thought in mind, let's have a look at what we have here. Right, so from the top, I've included your name, I've included the purchaser's information. Here's all the usual information about the property itself. Now, the proposal on the table is from the purchaser is to buy your property at $495,000. At this point, your vendor would likely say, no, there's nowhere in the world I'm not taking that. Okay, that's fine. Let's just go through the whole thing from start to finish, and we'll come back afterwards and modify it where we need to. Okay, but I've got the message, you're not happy with that. The deposit, I have to say, is looking really strong. It's a full 10% of the price that's being offered. That's very, very strong. And the deposit, what's more, is also payable upon acceptance. Again, so we're dealing with a purchaser that actually wants the property. Yeah, good, healthy deposit up front. Very strong sign. Settlement day is out to 3rd of May. It might look quite a long way away, but there are some reasons for that, and bear with me, I'll come to those in a moment. Provision here for interest for late settlements. Now this works very fairly both ways. In the event that the purchaser were to be late with the money come settlement date, if the purchaser were to be late, you can invoke this penalty interest and you can charge them interest at the rate of 14%. Yeah, all right, that's an annual rate, of course. You can charge them a rate of 14%, but beware, if for some reason you didn't settle when you were supposed to, then the reverse applies. So it's absolutely fair. Now, the purchaser does have some conditions. Purchaser is going to need to borrow some money. They're looking Westpac, obviously one of the major trading banks, looking at borrowing $300,000. $300,000 on a purchase price just shy of $500,000. I have to say that's not a great deal of money. Yeah, from a finance point of view, I'd have to say that looks strong. In terms of time frame, purchaser needs 10 working days to get that confirmed with their bank. 10 working days, again, I think is perfectly reasonable, because it means that we'll know in 2 weeks if this is going to fly or not. Yeah, so 10 working days is nice and short. I'm relaxed with that. Now, purchaser does want to get a couple of other reports, LIM report and building report. Both of these are absolutely stock standard. They will be at the purchaser's cost. The LIM report is simply a file search from the local council, everything the council knows about the property, and they would also like to get a builder or a building inspector to come around and check it out. Yeah, I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with your property. They just want to come around, check it out, make sure there's nothing nasty looming in the future. Yeah, so pretty straightforward. You're okay with those? Yes. Right. Let's come through to some special conditions, further terms of sale. Now, this is primarily why we have the reason for the settlement dates that we do. All right, you see here that the purchaser actually needs to sell their own property, but the good news is they've got a contract on it already. So there's a contract in place, it's all signed up, it's a proper binding legal contract. All we're doing is actually waiting for that contract to become unconditional. Okay, now that agreement rather is scheduled to become unconditional 3 o'clock on the 20th of April. Yeah, okay, it's a little way down the track, but there is an agreement in place, so we simply have to wait for that to run its course. Okay, now, it's probably a good thing at this point to mention the escape clause. Now, I hope you don't mind, but what I've done, I've taken the initiative here and I've added in an escape clause for your benefit. Right. What the escape clause does, it's exactly what it says. It gives you an escape route. In the event that a second purchaser comes along and wants to buy your property, you can enter into another contract for the sale of your home, right? You can enter into a second contract. So, if that was to happen, we would still need to go back to the first purchaser. We give them 5 working days notice. And in that 5 working day period, they're either going to declare unconditional, that is, they commit to buying your property, alternatively, they walk away. Yeah? But obviously we won't do that until we've got another agreement in place. Yeah, does that sound like a good idea to you? Yeah, you're bound to say yes, okay. All right. The only other thing that we need to discuss in here, purchaser did express some small concern about the state of the plumbing, and they would like to get a registered plumber to come along and check it out, just to make sure that there's no big cost looming in the immediate future. They'd like to get a plumber to come along and check that out. That's in addition to the usual building report. So you're okay with those things? You're bound to say yes, okay. All right, so far so good. Let's run through the chattels. Now, what I have here are the chattels list, which I took from the original contracts of agency. Would you just cast your eye over those, please, and just confirm those are the chattels that you do in fact wish to sell with the property? Yeah, so my vendor is going to look at those and say, yes, no blinds, drapes, waste disposal unit, that's right, yes. Yeah, glad to see the back of those damn concrete gnomes. Yeah, okay. So my vendor has said that they're happy with all of those things. Good. Okay, Harry, we're nearly done. One last thing, please. I would ask you, please, to read these warnings on the back page of the agreement. Now, the main point I'd like to make here is that if we succeed in bringing this to a conclusion, we create a contract. It is a legally binding contract, and I believe it's really important from your point of view that you seek your own independent legal advice before you put the final signature to this. Okay. So let's now go right back to the beginning. So how do you feel about that proposal? How would you like to respond? Bear in mind, you can accept it, you can reject it, you can counter it. So let's say, for sake of argument, my vendor comes back and let's say they want to change the price. Okay, my vendor comes back, $495 doesn't do it. What was I, 525? $495 doesn't do it. I'll go for 505. Yeah, okay. I now cross out that figure. I'll write in the new figure, $505,000. Okay. For the sake of this, I'll say there are no other changes. If there are no other changes, I'll treat them exactly the same way. Okay. Okay, Harry, we now come to the ceremony of the signatures. Give Harry the pen. Harry, I need you please to initial in a few places. Firstly, I'd like you to initial where I've changed the price. So Harry initials, that's Harry's initial, change of price. Similarly, where these additional clauses have gone into the agreement, would you please do exactly what the purchaser has done and initial across the join? So purchaser, so my vendor, now initials here, here, and here. Okay. We are nearly done. Through to the chattels. If you're happy with everything that appears there on the chattels list, would you please do exactly as the purchaser has done and initial alongside alterations and additions. So Harry Potter is initialing here, 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 and here. Okay. Now, those warnings that I ask you to read on the back page, and particularly the recommendation you seek your own independent legal advice, would you just confirm for me, please, that you have in fact read that, and would you initial where the purchaser has here? Okay, so Harry's done that too. Now, by signing here, signature of vendor, you're in fact confirming your counter offer back to the other side. You're also confirming that you have received the guide. Yes, this little book that you read through just now. Okay, Harry Potter's quite happy with that, so he signs. Okay. Right, I now have a counter offer. All good? Okay. Same process, I can go back to my purchaser. Right. Same logic, I go back to my purchaser, I make a phone call, and they're going to ask me how much it is, and I sidestep it again, and I wind up sitting in front of my purchaser. Okay, so I'm now sitting in front of my purchaser, I'm back talking to Hector. Right, I can come back with, Hector, this is really, really good news. Really good news. Okay, all right. As you know, the vendor was looking for $525,000. Right, they've shaved $20,000 off that. Yeah, so the vendor has seriously reduced their price expectations. They're down now to $505,000, and that's the only change. All of the dates, all of the clauses, all of the chattels, everything else is exactly as you wanted it. Yeah, plus we've got a reduction in the price. Yeah, how good is that? Yeah, okay. Right. Hector, of course, is now deliriously happy with all of this. Okay. So, Hector, you're happy to proceed now? Yes, I thought you would be, right. I need you please to initial alongside the price change. There's Hector's initial alongside the price change. So, nothing else on this document has changed. Because nothing else has changed, it's all done now, isn't it? It's all initial both ways, it's all signed both ways. Okay. All right. So, that's really good news. Now, before we go any further, I just need to call, right? I just need to call the vendor and give him the good news. Yeah, so I'm still sitting with Hector, my purchaser. I can call the vendor and I say, hi, here, it's, what's his name? Harry, yeah, okay. Harry answers the phone. It's a deal, yeah? It's a deal. Richard here, Unitech Realty. Yes, okay, excellent. Yeah, that's great, Harry. Yeah, I'll be in touch later on regarding all the administration. Just wanted to let you know it's a done deal. Okay, end of conversation. I'm back now sitting with my purchaser. All right. The last thing I need to do on this document is to date the agreement. Yeah, because so many things run from the date of the agreement. So today, of course, is the 2nd of March. So I'll just add that to the top of the front page. 2nd March 2018. Okay. Now, one last thing, Hector, when we discussed earlier the question of the deposit, you said you were happy to pay $49,500 upon acceptance, and of course we now have acceptance. So you can, if you wish, give me a check for $49,500 payable into my company's trust account. Alternatively, I'll give you the detail of the account and you can simply transfer the funds into it. Yeah, what would work best for you? Transfer the funds, okay. That's fine, end of role play. All good?
Good.
Yeah, okay. All right, there's no particular questions out of that? Nothing there you can't do? It always looks easy when somebody else does it, I know, but it's just practice.
Yeah.
All happy? Yeah, okay, good. Good, we'll get rid of that. Good, done.